My name is James. I'm 32, a freelance writer who's always drawn to solitude when the world feels too loud. I came to this lake cabin to escape the relentless buzz of the city, hoping the quiet would help me finish my next book. The night wraps around the forest like a heavy blanket, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The only light comes from a dim lantern hanging on the porch, casting long, trembling shadows on the wooden planks beneath my feet. The air is cool, almost biting, and somewhere in the distance, the gentle lapping of water against the shore is steady, reassuring. But something feels off. The usual chorus of crickets and frogs is strangely absent, as if the forest itself has fallen silent. I catch a flicker of movement in the window's reflection, a shape that doesn't quite belong to me. And when I look again, there's nothing there. A sudden rustle in the underbrush makes me freeze, but there's no wind to stir the leaves. I tell myself it's just my imagination playing tricks, a mind stretched thin by isolation. Still, a prickling sensation creeps up my spine, like unseen eyes tracing my every breath. I step back inside, but the feeling lingers, settling deep beneath the quiet night. The night deepened, and the silence pressed heavier against my skin. I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe the creaking of old wood settling, but every so often, a faint rustle would punctuate the stillness, like a cautious step just beyond the tree line. I reached for my notebook, hoping to anchor myself in familiar words, but then something caught my eye. On the small wooden table beside the flickering candle, the pen I'd left there earlier was now lying at an odd angle, as if it had been nudged. I shook my head, tried to dismiss the unease creeping up my neck. Maybe I'd knocked it without noticing. Yet the shadows in the corners of the cabin seemed to shift with an unnatural rhythm, stretching and contracting like they were breathing. Outside, the usual chorus of crickets and frogs was eerily absent, replaced by a subtle, irregular tapping. Not steady like rain, but sporadic, deliberate. I stood and moved toward the door, pausing as a cold draft brushed past me, carrying the sharp scent of damp earth. My skin prickled, and for a moment, I felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes traced my every move. The rational part of me fought to explain it away. Maybe it was an animal or my own frayed nerves, but doubt gnawed at the edges of my certainty. Something wasn't right. I needed to see for myself. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the flashlight from the shelf and stepped outside, aiming its narrow beam toward the dense woods. The darkness swallowed the light quickly, but I caught a glimpse of movement just beyond the reach of the glow, a shadow slipping between the trees. Heart pounding, I decided to follow it, curiosity and fear entwined, pulling me deeper into the night's unsettling mystery. I stepped off the porch into the cold night, the beam of my flashlight piercing the dense blackness. The shadow I'd glimpsed darted between the trees, just beyond the reach of the light, moving with a fluidity that didn't belong in the natural world. Heart pounding, I followed, branches scraping my arms, leaves crunching beneath my boots. The forest seemed to close in around me, swallowing the familiar sounds I expected, replacing them with an eerie silence, so thick it pressed against my ears. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted, or maybe it was the world itself. The trees warped, their trunks bending impossibly, twisting like smoke. The path I thought I was on dissolved into darkness, and the air grew dense, heavy with a cold that seeped into my bones. I blinked, and the flashlight flickered erratically, casting grotesque shadows that danced just beyond my vision. Was that a whisper? A soft breath close to my ear? I spun around, but only thick fog greeted me, curling and swirling in shapes that made my stomach twist. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt rooted, trembling uncontrollably. Time fractured. Seconds stretched and snapped back, disorienting me as voices began to echo from all directions, murmurs that twisted words I couldn't grasp. I tried to steady my breath, telling myself this was some trick of exhaustion, some cruel prank my mind was playing. But then I saw it, an old, gnarled tree with symbols carved deep into its bark, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The carving pulsed, as if alive, and the air around it shimmered, bending like a heat haze. Panic surged. I turned to retrace my steps, but the forest was no longer the place I had entered. The same tree stood behind me now, impossibly close. The shadows thickened, pressing in, whispering secrets I couldn't understand but felt deep in my gut. My flashlight died completely, plunging me into suffocating darkness. I was alone, trapped in a place that refused to be real, with something moving just beyond the edge of sight. And I knew, whatever it was waiting for me. My breath comes in ragged gasps, the cold seeping into my bones like the forest itself is consuming me. The fog thickens, swirling around my legs, rising to choke my chest. The trees twist grotesquely, their branches clawing at the sky, yet the sky is gone, replaced by an endless void that presses down, heavy and suffocating. I stumble forward, but the ground beneath me shifts, a sickening vertigo twisting my stomach as if the earth itself is alive, turning and folding into some impossible shape. My lantern flickers one last time, then dies, plunging me into utter darkness. Panic claws at my mind. I can feel it now, watching, not just out there, but inside me, pulling at the edges of my sanity. A whisper, low and ancient, curls around my ears. It's not words, but feelings, fear, despair, a cold smile that spreads beneath my skin. And then the vision hits. Endless reflections of myself trapped in the water, eyes wide with terror, mouths opening in silent screams that vanish before sound can escape. I am sinking, falling through layers of time and space that twist and shatter like broken glass. The cabin, the lake, the forest, they bleed into one another, a nightmare loop with no escape. Faces peer from the shadows, not fully human, not fully beast, eyes gleaming with hunger, waiting. I reach out, but my hands dissolve into mist. My voice breaks into a scream that echoes endlessly, swallowed by the void. There's no way back. No dawn, no rescue. Only the cold, the silence, and the watching. And then nothing. It waits. My name is Jonathan. I'm 32, a writer who's been chasing silence more than stories lately. I came to this lake cabin seeking solitude, a break from the city's relentless noise and the pressure to create. The woods here are dense, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, cool enough to make my breath visible in the fading light. Night is settling fast, swallowing the last hues of orange behind the hills. The only sounds are the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by a soft breeze. But something feels off. The usual chorus of crickets and frogs I expected is missing, replaced by an eerie stillness that presses in, almost as if the forest itself is holding its breath. A faint snap echoes somewhere out there, but when I search the dark tree line, nothing moves. Inside the cabin, the dim glow from the fireplace flickers, casting shadows that seem too still, too deliberate. I catch a glimpse of something in the window's reflection, a shape that doesn't quite fit the room's outline. And for a moment, I wonder if I'm truly alone. The night pressed heavier now, the shadows outside, deepening into a suffocating blackness. I sat frozen by the window, heart drumming against my ribs, eyes locked on the glass where that fleeting figure had appeared. But when I blinked, it was gone. No trace but a shiver crawling down my spine. The forest silence wasn't empty anymore. It was expectant, like the dark was holding its breath, waiting for something I couldn't name. I tried to shake the unease by moving around the cabin, telling myself it was just my imagination tangled with the isolation. That's when I noticed it. The old wooden chair by the fireplace, which I was certain had been tucked neatly in the corner, now sat awkwardly angled toward the door, as if someone had pulled it out. I hadn't moved it. The floor creaked softly beneath my feet, but the sound felt out of place, too deliberate, too rhythmic. It pulsed like footsteps pacing just outside, careful not to cross the threshold. I reached for the lamp on the table, flicking it on. Its yellow glow fought the darkness, but the shadows only seemed to deepen where the light didn't reach. The air smelled colder now, the sharp scent of pine mingling with something else, something metallic, faint but distinct. The hairs on my neck prickled as a sudden breeze whispered through the cracked window, though I was sure I'd closed it tight. A soft thud echoed from the back of the cabin. My breath hitched. I told myself it was probably a branch or an animal, but the sound was too deliberate, like something had shifted an object inside. Compelled by a mix of dread and curiosity, I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen counter and stepped toward the narrow hallway leading to the storage room I hadn't yet explored. The beam cut through the darkness as I paused at the doorway, heart pounding. Something was waiting in there, something I needed to see. My hand trembled as I pushed open the creaking door to the storage room. The darkness inside was suffocating, thick enough to swallow the weak beam of my flashlight hole. I stepped forward, heart hammering, the metal scent growing stronger, pungent and sharp. Suddenly, the floor beneath me shifted, or maybe it was the room itself. Walls seemed to bend, closing in, then stretching impossibly far. I blinked, trying to steady my spinning vision, but the air pulsed with a cold energy that made my skin crawl. A low whisper curled around me, unintelligible but urgent, threading through the silence like a living thing. I spun, searching for the source, but found only shadows that rippled unnaturally, as if breathing. My breath hitched, sweat slicking my palms, and a metallic taste flooded my mouth. Then, a shape emerged from the darkness, at first just a flicker, then clearer, impossibly tall and thin, its eyes hollow yet piercing. It didn't move like anything human, more like a distortion in the air, a ripple in reality itself. I stumbled back, panic tightening my throat, but the door had vanished. The room stretched endlessly, no corners, no exit, just an abyss that swallowed sound and light. Time lost meaning. Seconds dragged into hours, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. The whispers grew louder, overlapping voices speaking in tongues I almost understood, promising horrors I couldn't name. My legs buckled, and I sank to the cold floor, heart racing, mind fracturing as the presence closed in, its breath like ice on my neck. I was trapped, utterly alone, with something watching, waiting, and I knew without a doubt I was not safe. Whatever this was, it was only just beginning. The darkness tightens like a noose around my chest, every breath a ragged gasp, every heartbeat a drum echoing in a cavern of madness. The walls pulse and breathe, swelling and contracting as if the cabin itself is alive, feeding off my terror. I stumble forward, but the floor twists beneath me, a sickening spiral that drags me down into a pit that has no bottom. My vision fractures, fractals of shadow and light, impossible angles folding into themselves, a labyrinth with no exit. Whispers crawl beneath my skin, voices not meant for human ears, chanting in tongues older than time. They pull at my mind, unraveling threads of sanity until I am nothing but a vessel of raw, primal fear. Then, from the abyss, a form emerges, tall, formless, yet impossibly present. Its eyes are voids that consume light and hope alike. It reaches out, and the air thickens, heavy with the metallic stench that first warned me. I try to scream, to run, but I am weightless and rooted all at once, trapped in a loop. I see myself again, reflected in the warped glass. Another shadow among shadows, a ghost doomed to wander these shifting halls forever. The cabin's silence returns, but it is hollow, a deafening void that swallows time whole. I am lost in this eternal twilight where nothing moves forward, where the past and future bleed into one endless night. The forest outside remains, silent and waiting, a predator watching for the next soul to slip through the cracks. There is no escape, no salvación, only the relentless, suffocating presence that waits patiently in the dark. And I'm already part of it. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking with us into the heart of darkness. If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't forget to leave a like. It helps us keep bringing you echoes of the unknown. Tell us in the comments, Which story disturbed you the most or left you wanting more? And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because next time, it might be your story we tell.